this lesson, we're going to just work through a few more examples of working with plots, just to generalize how to use and apply them. And so let's consider that we're working with the plot, and we're going to establish a few values for our vector. So let's say x goes from 0 so we'll specify a range, and we'll say y equals x. And so this will be just a general case of how we can create a line plot. And so it'll just be a line graph that rises to the right. So we've created values going from, for both x and y, going from 0 up to 40, and we have incremented it with values of being every 5, it'll increase. And so let's take a look at another simple example. And let's say we want to generate a parabolic plot. So we will say x equals 0. And we can say x is going to be negative 100, 20 up to 100. And then we'll say y equals and next we want to plot x against y. And so running this plot, we have a bit of a parabolic plot that goes from the values of, goes from our values up to x squared to 100. So this displays an example of a parabolic plot. We could further also reduce the values for incrementing it as well. So we can consider if we have x negative 100, we'll decrement it by 5. And y is still going to equal to x. Then we will plot x and y. And so in this instance, we have a bit of a wider plot for our example. Makes the grid a little bit smoother. Now we're also able to incorporate plots using our trigonometric functions. And so let's say that we have we'll introduce sine x for plotting. So if we have values that are represented for x, We're going to increment it by 0.01 up to 10 for x. Then y value is going to equal to the sine of x. And so let's plot x and y. Once we plot it, we get a plot of the sine of x going from 0 to 10 in 0.01 increments. And so let's also add a little bit to our plot in that we want to include labels. And we'll call it x value. Then we'll also have our y label. Which would be sine of x. And then our title. It's going to be sine of x graph. So we can incorporate that into our plot with our appropriate title for our plot, and then appropriate labels for our x-axis and our y-axis as well. And so some additional mechanisms in which we can provide for multiple plots as well. Let's consider we'll have multiple functions on our plot. Let's consider that we consider x to be equal to, we can copy our previous value for x and y. And then we can also have a g value for cosine of x. And now in our plot, what we'll do is we'll plot x and y, x and g as well. And then we can have our line specializations incorporated too. And so let's say our legend is going to be sine of x and cosine of x. So if we were to plot this, we have our plot here that shows both the cosine of x in red and the sine of x in blue. And we can incorporate our title. Call this a plot of the sine of x and cosine of x. So in that case, we've added in multiple components to our graph here. So we can also revisit incorporating additional values for modifying and updating our axis. So when we scale our plot axis, we can first declare values. So this will be for X. So we'll have values for 0, again. And now if we want to specify a function for our X value, and then we can plot, again, these values on X and Y with our axis being set. To denote the appropriate range that we want to use. And this is essentially going to enable us to set appropriate limits and values for our axis. And so this is going to give us a X-min, a X-max, a Y-min, and a Y-max. So what is giving me here? Oh, because I need to have a comma here. And that provides us with the appropriate values. We have our X-min going from 0, the max 10, and the Y-min going from -1, and the Y-max going to 1. And again, we can further specify our title. Okay. So now we can also take another look at different ways to do our subplotting as we previously learned. So if we set the values and increment it to 5, so we start from 0, go to 5 in 0.01 increments. Say Y, make it an exponential function of X. And so our function is going to be the exponential and sine function of -1.5 times X times sine of 10X. Then we'll have a subplot, 1, 2, 1. So we'll want to plot X and Y here. And we can give our appropriate labels as well. And we can include the function that we're plotting here. And we're also able to specify the X-min, X-max, and Y-min and Y-max. Okay. And then if we want to have another plot for a function of y, and we can say, but instead of negative 1.5, we can say negative 2 sine of x. And then we'll have our subplot from 1 to 2, and this is plot 2. And then we want to plot the values again. And we have our y label. Then we will set our axis values as well. All right, and so if we run this section, we will get our subplots side by side here, 2 plots, plot number 1 and plot number 2. This is incorporating subplots. And so that is just another overview of some of the basics of working with plots, generating simple plots, plots that are based off of trigonometric functions, multiple plots on the same graph, and how we can scale our axes and incorporate subplots as well.